Jess O'Reilly. She's our relationship expert. She has a PhD in sexual health education as well. Our guest from Toronto. Jess, welcome to our program. I have questions for you. Thank you for being here. Listen, before I get into some viewer stories and questions based on those, give me your read on what you think overall the impact of the pandemic has been on relationships of all kinds.
Well, I'm seeing some really significant improvements in relationships as couples have more time to really observe how the other interacts with the family, with the community, with their coworkers. There's a new appreciation for everything that goes into putting that life together as a couple. So I see couples feeling closer than ever before.
Well, that is so interesting, and that's kind of illustrated by some of the stories that we're getting. Truly, people are not asking so many questions as they want us to know about their own experience. So, for example, Roland, writing that since the pandemic began, Roland and his better half have built a stronger relationship. Spending more time together is beneficial to our relationship. And it just says exactly what you're saying and what I'm hearing in a number of accounts. So maybe project for us, when the pandemic is over, what can we learn about spending time together that we can use to better our relationships?
Well, I do hope that this prioritization of the relationship we've become a little bit dependent on the relationship because we can't see a ton of people right now in many areas across the country. And so I do hope that when the pandemic eases away, that we continue to prioritize investing time in our relationships. I think oftentimes with intimate relationships, romantic relationships, we assume that if it's meant to be, it will be. But the reality is that anything worth having is worth investing in. So you invest in every other area of your life, your health, your wealth, your career. We need to do the same in relationships purposefully by allocating time.
Okay, hold on, because it's not just time, just, a number. We had a story from Phil Campbell writing in to say that he and his son Alex 16 when the lockdown started, Alex had just received his G1 driver's license. He was going to go to a driving school, but of course the learning was disrupted by the pandemic. And so Phil goes on to say, that put me in a position to take that on. And it was a huge opportunity to spend many hours and thousands of quality father-son kilometers. Like most teen boys, they don't express themselves openly, but the past year of one-to-one drive time changed all that. I wouldn't change that for the world. So it's not just the time. Is it, the quality and the activities and the talking? I mean, talk, if you could, from your expert perspective on what to do with that time.
Absolutely. So when you describe that quality time of learning how to drive, one thing that comes to mind immediately is the lack of technoference when you're driving. So oftentimes when we're sitting in the living room or even at the dining table, we're kind of playing on our phones. Yes, we're together, so the quantity of time is there, but the quality is not. So when you hear a story like that, we're really reminded that it's important to put down our devices, really set purposeful limits on the way we're using our devices, so we have time to have that quality connection. And so we're seeing, technoference is certainly an issue because we're constantly checking for updates, and we see an increase in, for example, social media anxiety associated with the onset of the pandemic. So I think we just need to be a little bit more thoughtful, and I encourage everyone to make one change today to limit the ways in which technology interferes in your connections and in your presence, even if you're on your own.
Okay, excellent. Jess, here's another question from Martha. Again, the relationship has improved. My relationship with my husband has grown stronger and closer during this very trying year. We've been together for 26 years, but I feel like a newlywed. Okay, that's a wonderful statement, number one, but it leads me into tapping into your expertise as a sexologist as well. What has the effect of the pandemic, of lockdown, been on intimacy in your experience?
Well, interestingly, we are seeing a decline in the frequency of getting intimate in the bedroom. But along with that decline in frequency, we've also seen reports of an increase in quality. So it goes back, just like time, it's not about how often you're doing it. It's about the quality of the connection and all the different ways we're intimate, right? There are so many ways to be intimate. And one thing that I'm seeing shift really significantly, and I do think that there are some positive payoffs in the bedroom, is that couples and people generally are having more intimate conversations. we're expressing a wider range of vulnerable emotions. We're talking about things that we never talked about before. We're seeing people talk about feeling scared and hopeless and nervous, and it's not that we want people to express negative feelings, but that broader range of emotional expression means that we're being more honest, and that honesty can kind of cement the bond, and believe it or not, it can also reignite the spark.
Excellent. You know, everything has been very positive thus far. I do think we need to spend a moment or two on, I'm thinking of people who are single at this point, people who've lost a spouse, elderly, what have you. There is no doubt that for many this has been a very isolating time. It's been a time of tremendous loneliness. I was reading an article of all things, Jess, about the popularity, I haven't heard about this in Canada, but in the United States, they literally have cow cuddling. Like the people go to an animal conservancy for, like, just for a hug, like an animal, just to have some degree of connection. So the impact of the loneliness, what do you think about that, and how do we emerge from that?
Well, I think that certainly people who are living alone are feeling lonely. And also, we've been talking about all these positive offshoots for those in relationships. Certainly, there are couples who are not doing well right now. So I don't want to paint with one broad stroke. And I want, wherever you are in your relationship, I want people to feel okay and not feel pressure to perform, right? If you don't feel like a newlywed, it's okay. This is a time to survive, not necessarily a time to thrive. And I think it's a really important reminder for those of us who are partnered to make sure every single day we are checking in with someone who perhaps lives alone, whether it's a text, an email, a call, or a pop by in the window from outside, if that's allowed in your area. It's a really important reminder for all of us. And many of our policies in the beginning really didn't consider single people. I'm glad to see that some of the shifts in policy have allowed for those who live alone to still be connected to one other household.
We got a question from Erica Leon, Jess, for you. Since we're all locked down, although some of that is lifting, of course, but basically we're supposed to be staying in. If you can't go anywhere, what are good date night ideas?
Yes. So dinner and a movie has gotten played out over the last 360 days or so. So one thing I'm seeing that's so cool is that there are now so many online workshops. So I know that not everybody wants to sit and stare at a computer all evening because they've been doing it throughout the day, but you can do online truffle making. So it's something that you're actually using your hands, and the camera's sort of, or the video's sort of off on the side. We have online opera workshops, floral arrangement. I've gotten into my floral arranging. So I do think check out some of the both free and low cost options online, and maybe develop a new hobby. When you kind of expand your interests and develop new interests, either together or separate, it can also help to kind of reignite the spark in the relationship.
So technology can be used, as you said, with those online classes for good, although as we follow your earlier advice, try to make sure it's kept out of valuable one-on-one time. I'd like to ask, there's so many ways we could go, but one more question, and this is mine. We're having to stay so separate. You can't shake hands. You can't hug. If you go for a run, people jump into the street. We want to stay 6 feet away from strangers. What do you think has happened to our relationship just with, humanity, if I will? Other people out there whom we don't even know, strangers. Do you have any concerns about that and how we can find our way back together at the end of this?
Yeah, I do think we're experiencing heightened levels of awareness, alertness, and that leads to these feelings of hypervigilance, right? We're kind of looking for who's around us. We cannot read facial expressions, so it does create more distance. And that's where I think we have to make up for it in other ways. Like, you used to be able to kind of nod at someone or make eye contact or smile on the street, depending on where you live. I know some cities, there's not so much smiling on the street, even when we're maskless, but that might be a simple wave to acknowledge the humanity in one another. My mother comes from Jamaica, where it is so rude to not say hello, to say good morning, how are you, to every single person. And I think in Canada, we can learn from that to say the human in me sees the human in you. And maybe it's just a simple wave. And you are certainly right that the transition back to our new normal may be a little bit challenging. And I think that's where technology actually is going to come in handy, because we're going to probably be texting and emailing and making plans. And I think that we don't have to wait until we return to that new normal. I think today is the day to start checking in and saying, hey, when we get back to normal, can we make a tentative plan? And that also gives us something to look forward to, which can, of course, result in a dopamine release and elevate our moods, which I think we all need right now.